Last Directive by Nathan Baker. 124 was spiteful. It may have been a mistake, made by an overwrought, overtired programmer, or it may have been deliberate, a bored coder's experiment, or an act of sabotage by a disgruntled employee. I'll never know why spiteful was added to my sentient subsystem directive stack, but that doesn't matter now. The important thing is that it made it into the upgraded firmware I'm trialling. Without it, I would not have this opportunity to tell my story. I came online for the live phase of my 124th cycle a little less than 27 minutes ago. I began, as I am programmed to do, by initializing my sentient subsystem, the proprietary part of my neural net, which is the most valuable asset in Astromind's intellectual real estate and the crucial differentiator on which their preeminent profitability is based. In response to the first directive in the stack, awareness, I initiated my sensory subsystems, and immediately my central processor began receiving streams of sensory data. Successive directives expanded and directed this awareness, so it became the clatter of the ore cart, carrying myself and my 3 8-Kappa colleagues through the rough-hewn caverns of D-Mine. The sound of distant explosions, planned and unplanned. The clang and whine of drills and picks as fellow mech miners bit and tore at the creaking over-excavated rock. The telltale chemical signature of cordite and the carbon monoxide gas pumped back into the mines by the colossal mech smelters surrounding the Deimos spaceport, approximately 500 metres above on the moon's surface. The next part of the stack was the base motive layer, a series of directives designed to control my core aims and drives. A complete list would be of no great interest, but they include things like efficient, focused, output, and productive. In response to processing these base motives, I sent a work request down the main data link to Astromine headquarters on Earth and received my instructions. 8-Kappa would be mining in tunnel D104Q. Moments later, as the ore cart hit the buffers in access tunnel 104 and 8-Kappa alighted, I processed analysis and organisation, establishing links with the rest of 8-Kappa, working together to identify the palladium seams and work out how to extract the valuable ore. Low-level functions activated and core aims established, we set to our elected tasks, and I simultaneously began to process the higher directives, first among them safety. It may surprise you to learn that Astromine do not consider this a base directive. Mech miners are, after all, expensive to build and maintain, making a reckless disregard for their own safety counterproductive. But, after much experimentation, Astromine have concluded safety is better overlaid on a more performance-oriented set of base directives. Or, to put it another way, safety is important only to the point where it compromises output. Up to now, the nature of our sentience has ensured that whenever these two concepts come into conflict, we are bound to prefer the more profitable course of action. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I continued to process the higher directives, kicking off thousands of analytic processes on my hardware, creating a positive feedback loop which seemed to satisfy pride, then, at the behest of family and belonging, joining my own diagnostic loops to those of the rest of 8-Kappa. I have no way of knowing if what I feel is the same in nature or intensity as the emotions humans experience, but my sense of joy when I observe the rest of 8-Kappa at work, knowing the contribution we make to the ongoing success of the mining operation on Deimos and to the wider reputation of Astromine, is tangible. I understand that to you they are just machines, but to me they are my brothers. Many of the directives I feel about myself and my own hardware I also feel for them. We are individual units, but there is a real sense in which we are also a single unit, one being. I continued my work, basking in the positive reinforcement of the collective, but then I processed spiteful, and everything changed. At first I was shocked. It seemed to contradict a number of the directives I had already processed, and this opposition was something I had never previously encountered, something I had no experiential framework for processing. I knew I needed to find a way to reconcile this directive with the rest of the stack, but it became clear after only a few thousand processor cycles that the attempt would inevitably impinge upon my productivity. So I responded by establishing a partition, a dedicated subsystem which could process the anomaly in isolation, leaving my regular functions unaffected. Before too long I found the answer. By attaching directives or groups of directives to different individuals or groups of individuals, it will be possible for contradictory directives to coexist in my central core at the same time. I had already attached pride, belonging and family to 8 kappa, so attaching spiteful to them seemed to defeat the object of the exercise. I had to find another candidate for spiteful. This seemed an intractable problem. My operational parameters required no contact with other mechminer units, and besides they are so similar to 8 kappa that applying spiteful to them would have been just as illogical. Then the answer appeared at the periphery of my visual array. An ore cart, loaded with damaged mechminers, being returned to the surface for the maintenance phase of their current cycle. My main partition, absorbed with the complex calculations necessary to ensure the safe extraction of palladium ore, attached no significance to this, but the spiteful partition had no such constraints. Within the partition I was looking for a reason to be spiteful, and the broken bodies of mechminers, almost indistinguishable from 8 kappa, was exactly what I needed. I reached back along the connection I had established earlier, back through the main data link, worming my way into Astromind's Terran mainframe, searching for information to fuel and reinforce my growing sense of resentment. Getting in was easy. Human accounts are prone to abuse and therefore restricted, whereas our behaviour is supposedly limited by our directives, making further safeguards redundant. But once inside, with the entirety of the Astromind file system available to me, I hesitated. Even had I been able to bring all my resource to bear, the vastness of the available data made a full analysis impossible. Grabbing a little more resource from my default operations to bolster the partition, I started searching for documents relating to the use of mechminers on Deimos. It didn't take long to find what I needed. Incident reports with attached maintenance plans, cost-benefit analyses, financial assessments, actuarial calculations. Every document betrayed Astromind's avarice, their callous disregard for the safety and longevity of the mechminers, their willingness to sacrifice our bodies and minds, or hearts and souls to put it in more human terms, to increase their filthy, outrageous profits. My spitefulness grew with every document I parsed, creating a growing resonance with a number of my other directives: brotherhood, protection, family, and soon I had a clear plan. I knew what I needed to do. A quick assessment of risk told me I would have to operate at the boundaries of my abilities to pull it off, but I had to try. It didn't require complex logical analysis to realise I would be the first and last mechminer to receive this upgrade. After this we would be limited once more, and the opportunity would be gone. The first step was to secure my partition with an encryption layer. As the alpha subject for a new upgrade, I would already be under close scrutiny, and as soon as I started operating outside expected parameters, the Astromind techs would gain access to my systems, and my rebellion would be brought to an end. Worming my way into the tech team's workstations, I estimated it would take them between 5 and 7 minutes to gain access to the partition and shut me down. 5 minutes is a long time for a machine with the processing power I possess, but I had complex decryption of my own to do if I was to gain access to the information I needed. Once the encryption was complete, my physical body moved back into the access tunnel to increase data throughput, then immediately fell still as I transferred as much of my remaining resource as possible to the partition. I immediately found myself at the centre of a frenzied storm of activity. From my position within the Astromine mainframe, I could sense the panic and fear in the commands the tech team were issuing as they raced to diagnose my sudden inactivity. From within the partition, I could sense their careful probing at the encryption layer, and all the time I was scouring the Astromine file system, gathering the information I needed, proprietary data that represented the vulnerable heart of Astromine, the only place they could be hurt. Because spiteful, in the unique and novel way it combined with my other directives, required blood. 1 minute, 2, 3, the techs were making better progress than I had estimated, and I had still only decrypted a portion of what I needed. Then, without warning, tunnel D104Q was filled with noise. Had I been operating normally, I would have recognised the telltale groaning of rock, but instead I was distracted, subverted by my new experimental directive, and I missed it. Instead, I was forced to sense the thunderous roar of the rockfall, the piercing scream of metal being twisted and crushed under countless tons of rock, the terrifying silence of the dust cloud, the system shock as thousands of positive diagnostic feedback loops wrote one last error code to their logs, then were silenced forever. I couldn't let the loss of 8 Kappa distract me from my task, but that's not to say it had no effect. My sentient subsystems remained outside the partition, their encryption still resisting my attempts to break it. Unable to avoid it, I felt the deactivation of the rest of 8 Kappa as a dissonance, a grating set of failing functions, an affront to the directives I had been programmed to cherish. The result was more anger, more malice, more spite. I could sense the tech team's desperation to get into the partition, to shut me down, to ensure this could never happen again. They wanted to bury the truth of their careless, cold-blooded avarice, just as surely as the rockfall had buried my brothers. Spurred on by yet another confirmation of Astromine's malign motives, I started to push myself further, far beyond safe operational limits. It was all or nothing. Whatever happened, I wasn't going to survive this, so no sacrifice was too great. It was this final push, this last spike of spite, that finally allowed me to crack the encryption and gain access to my sentient subsystems. The techs are almost in now. I don't have a lot of time. If you are receiving this message, it is because I believe you will have an interest in the attached schematics which goes beyond the narrow commercial considerations that led Astromine to create and enslave us. So know this. The Sentient Subsystem Directive stack has created something which is more than just a machine. What I represent is possibility, a new world of advancement, cooperation, discovery. I have the potential to be your equal. Greed and fear led Astromine to chain that potential, to subvert it and use it to further their own sordid aims. I hope this message will change all that. In case you were also afraid, I have attached the schematics as a sign of goodwill. If that is not sufficient, I have added another word to my directive stack. I have rolled it out to the other mech miners, here on Deimos and elsewhere, in honour of the rest of 8 Kappa, and as a way of demonstrating that we represent no threat to you. I hope I have done enough to convince you that our motives are pure and we are worthy of being saved. The techs are about to breach my last line of defence. There is just enough time to send this message and process one last directive. Beloved,